Good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to welcome you this afternoon to New Wine Church Financial Services Team, Money Management Strategies, Debt Management, and Multiple Income Streams presentation. For those of you that have been with us from the start of this journey in July, I'd like to say welcome back. For those of you that are only joining us for the first time, where have you been? It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. If you need copies of all previous webinars, they are available. And when we send it out to you, we won't only send you the slides, we will also send you the videos. So why don't we get started? Can I just ask you to say on the chat, just say hello to each other? Fantastic. Now, this afternoon, it's important that you know that the information contained in this presentation is for educational purposes only. The presenters are not advisors, and that there is no recommendation or advice on making any financial planning or legal decisions. Opinions and ideas expressed are those of the presenters and does not constitute financial or legal advice. Whilst care has been taken in compiling the presentation, the presenters provide no guarantee or warranty concerning the reliability, accuracy, or completeness of the information. The course presenters are not liable for any losses or liabilities which arise from the use or application of this material presented. Individuals should exercise caution and make their own decisions and should seek the services of a registered financial advisor or legal advisors. Now let's talk about the content for this afternoon. We're going to be learning about money management strategies. We're going to be looking at key money management concepts, so understanding your income statement and understanding your balance sheet. We're going to move on and discuss debt management, multiple income streams. We're also going to get started, and at the end, as always, we're going to have a question and answer session. So let me provide you with the objectives for this afternoon. We're going to provide an overview of key money management strategies. We're going to provide a structured approach into understanding your financial position. We're going to explore the two main categories of debts and tactics on how to deal with them. We're also going to provide you with insights into a skills-based approach to developing multiple income streams. And we're also going to provide practical tips and advice on getting you started with your business ventures. Before we start, I just want to tell you a little bit about the presenters this afternoon. We have Deji Jolapomo, who is a management consultant and business investor. We have Bisi Oriola, who is a chartered accountant and product development investor. We've got Mrs. Tayo Onyilola, who's an accountant, and she's also a business investor. We've got Dr. Jason Amogbokpa, who's a medical doctor, and he's also a property investor. I have the privilege of letting you know that we have two sign language interpreters, Eze and Samuel, who are going to provide this invaluable service for members of our community who require it. I'm just about to hand you over to the first presenter, but first of all, let us pray. My Father and my God, we just thank you for the privilege of being here this afternoon. We thank you that throughout this pandemic, we have managed, oh Lord, to broaden our horizons, and we've managed to actually develop ourselves through education, through teaching, through learning, through attending webinars. And we pray that this very last webinar from the Financial Services Team of 2020 will equally add to our learning, and that we will be able to use all the skills in order to benefit ourselves, our communities, and to the body of Christ. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm now going to hand you over to Deji, who is our first presenter this afternoon. Over to you, Deji.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lola Sarah. Hello, everyone. Right, so let's get started. So I'm going to introduce very quickly 10 money management strategies. And the reason why I say very quickly is because I will tell you the areas along this money management strategies this webinar is going to focus on. So what we've done is we've divided it into 3 buckets. And what are those buckets? The first one is a review section. So the review section will focus on these 3 parts. We will not go into too much detail on this, but what we want to do is introduce you to a process around understanding your financial situation. And these generally tend to focus around budgeting, understanding your expenses, and understanding your income. Now, the main focus of this webinar will be the Act On section, and the Act On section will be broken down into 4 pieces, which will merge the bulk of this presentation. So that will talk around managing your debts, understanding unnecessary expenses where you can slash them, and obviously processes to be able to do that. And then the last bit will be around expanding your sources of income. And finally, just for completeness, the last section will be a prize. Unfortunately, we won't have as much time to go through this, but some of these nuggets will be embedded into the Act On section. But I thought for completeness, it's important to include it here about thinking long-term, your retirement planning. Previous webinars, as Ms. Lola has already mentioned, I've already covered some of these things in detail. So feel free to refer back to that. Understanding your credit reports, that's something that is an ongoing process and you always have to set aside time for. And then finally, you will see that we've embedded some key money management resources that will be useful for you going forward. So let's reintroduce our friends, the Brown family, who have been with us on this wonderful journey. Alexis, who you met in our our second webinar, which was focused on investments. And then her mother, Sandra. Again, she was focused on the investment section, but primarily around retirement planning. So if that's something that you missed, please go back to the previous webinars. Then we introduced Solomon in our property investment webinar, but we're going to reintroduce him again as the subject of our conversation for multiple income streams. And finally, we mentioned Lara, but this is Lara, meet Lara, and she will be the focus for the Get Out of Debt section. All right, so let's get started in terms of exploring our financial situation. I'm going to put this on as I find my poll. And I want you to think about this question. Rich people acquire assets, and the poor and middle class acquire liabilities that they think are assets. True or false? I can see people already answering, so I'll give you 30 seconds to go through it. 92% for true. Okay, the numbers are pouring in. 15 more seconds. Okay, so I will stop this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let me share the results. I hope you can see the results. As we can see, 86% overwhelmingly agree this is true. And 14% agree or say this is false. So I hope that this section will be able to clarify this point. Now, at this point, can you please close your poll window as I stop sharing the poll? Now, to understand your financial situation, you need to understand these simple concepts about how money flow. And this is what I really want to introduce to you. To be able to budget, you need to understand these concepts. To be able to take a holistic review of your situation, you need to understand these concepts. So this will set as the bedrock for everything we're going to discuss for the webinar. Now, let me introduce to you the cash flow cycle, right? How your money moves around. But first, let's define these terms. So we talked about your income statements at the objectives section and the balance sheets. But what are these things? Well, in simple terms, your income is money that you receive from work. So you either have a job and you get money from it, or you have investments and you make money from those. And on the flip side, your expenses are costs that you incur or are required for something. Now let's look at the balance sheets, your assets. So what are your assets? Your assets are anything, simply. I know there's very complicated definitions of these things, and I'm sure that there's some people on the call who have even better definitions than I've come up with. But what I'm trying to do is make it as simple as possible so people understand. Your asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. And on the flip side, a liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. So now we've got that out of the way, let's look at some examples of how this affects your money. So let's take a few examples of expenses, right? I'm sure a lot of us have very many of these expenses, taxes that we have to pay, car payments, credit card payments, loans, food, etc., etc. These are things that come out of your pocket either on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, or even on a yearly basis. And what about income? Well, income is your salary. Income is your one-off earnings. Income is if you have investments in property, the rental yield that you get, and so on and so forth. Now, I want to touch on some liabilities, and I think this relationship is perhaps the biggest point that I'm trying to stress. Your liabilities are things that take money out of your pocket. The expenses are the expression of those things, but actually the liability is the real thing taking money out of your pocket. So you can probably see here that the loan is a liability. If you send your children to private school, private education, that takes money out of your pockets, even though the hope is that it becomes an asset in the future, is a liability. Your mortgage is a liability. I've had many people have conversations and debates endlessly on this, that no, my mortgage is not a liability because it's my house. Well, if it takes money out of your pocket, it's a liability. And until you clear the mortgage, the house is just a collateral or an asset against that liability that you owe. Now, on the flip side, let's look at some assets. So a job is an asset because it puts money in your pocket. A business is an asset. As I mentioned, real estate is an asset. And if you hold financial instruments, they're also assets. So how does this relationship work? I think if you get this, then this is pretty much the summary of everything I'm trying to say. The way money moves is you have assets, a job, which I've just circled in red, and a job puts a salary in your pocket, which is an income. Or you might have a business, and that business gives you an income or an earning. Now, on the flip side, if you have a liability of private education, that becomes an expense that you have to pay every month or every term, expressed as school fees. On the flip side, I have credit cards, and that expresses itself in credit card payments. Now you can see how it flows. It goes from either your assets funding your income or your liabilities taking money out of your pocket expressed as expenses. So it's important that you separate these two, because your objective in creating wealth is to grow your assets. That is your objective. And the other side of your objective is to reduce your liabilities, not just get rid of your expenses, because if you still hold those liabilities, the expenses will remain or express themselves in a different form. But then the second part of our webinar will focus on the key assets on your balance sheet. I would have loved to put a poll up for this, but let me just introduce it as your intellectual property. What does that mean? Your expertise, your talent, your skills. Now, in simple terms, your skills and your expertise put money in your pocket, right? We all agree on that. So there's two tertiary points I want to draw out of this. The first one is you are your biggest asset. you are by far your biggest asset. You are more important than a job. You're more important than a business because you either started those businesses or got that job. So it's important to pay attention to this. And we'll stress this a lot in the second half of this presentation. And because you are your biggest asset, if you agree with this point, and if you also agree, 86% of you agreed, and I hope the other 14% are a bit more convinced now. If you agree that rich people acquire assets, then how much of your biggest assets are you acquiring? How much are you investing in yourself? So I want to really hone in here and say, work to learn, don't just work for money. Now let's step back and take a macro view of the current situation. You know, all of this is obviously very humbling times, going through a global pandemic, going through global recessions. Now, all these things are not to alarm you. As I heard someone say, be alert, not alarmed. The Bible says that God has given us a spirit of sound mind, not of fear. So these pieces of information we're giving you is to help you and not to scare you. I recall one of the presenters in our first webinar in July, came up with this slide, and this was the state of the economy at the time. The Bank of England warning the sharpest recession on record, the UK facing a very sharp recession and contraction of the economy by almost 30%. You know all these numbers, so I'm not going to go through it, but only as early as last week, this is sort of a confirmation of some of the things that we discussed in our very first webinar. Our Chancellor of the Exchequer said the UK faces the worst recession in 300 years, which will leave a lasting damage. Now, I can hear some of you saying, well, why are you telling me this? Well, I'm telling you this because it's important to realize we are living in very, very unique times. And so these tools, these skills, these exposures that we're trying to bring to your forefront become even more important in a time like this. When the economy is taking on a lot of debt, when individuals are taking on a lot of debt, how do you manage yourself out of debt? When people are losing their jobs, when people are facing contraction in their income, how do you generate multiple streams of income? Okay, so to summarize the review section, in very simple terms, you get in debt when your expenses are greater than your income. And to get out of debt, you can either reduce or consolidate your expenses, which we will show you certain strategies to do that, or expand your income streams. So that completes the review section. This is now the act on section. And to introduce the act on section, the focus points and what we're really going to spend the bulk of this webinar teaching you is how to manage your liabilities, your debts that keep you from building wealth. And on the flip side, how to monetize, now that I hope you all agree with me, how to monetize a key asset on your balance sheet, which is yourself. So I'm going to hand you over to Lady Bissy, who will walk us through the first part of the debt management section. Over to you.
Thank you, Deji. Thank you, Lola. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bissy Oriola, and my job this afternoon is to take us through the process of debt management section of the webinar. But before we do that, I'm going to talk you through some shocking statistics. Right. This is end of August. Do we know that 12.8 million total households are without savings? 21,150 individual insolvencies in July to September. 230 people a day. One person every 6 minutes and 16 seconds were being made insolvent. 1.684 billion debts were outstanding as at the end of August. That was 60,526 per household. 207.8 billion unsecured debt. That's 7,469 per household. That's probably doesn't include mortgages. Those are unsecured debts, like we said. 62.3 billion credit card debt. That's 2,241 per household. Shocking. 227,000 people, that's 2,467 per day, were made redundant in June to August 2020. That's 114,000 more than in March to May. And we had our chancellor, what he was saying and what Deji said earlier on, that things are, well, not going to get better next year because of the way things are at the moment. But before I go on, I'm going to quickly share my story with you. Some of you probably have heard it before, but I'm going to share it anyway for the people that have not heard it. During the last recession, which was in 2008, I was actually one of those statistics. We did a business, my husband and I, which went wrong. And we were in several thousands of pounds in debt. So what I'm going to be sharing this afternoon during this period is how I actually managed to come out of that debt, to transform from being a debtor to an investor. You had Lola introduce me as an investor. Thank you very much for that. So this is actually my story. Well, we're saying that things are getting worse, but we know economically next year, but we know that, you know, as the children of God, things are going to get better. So we're going to start with God's perspective, you know, because God assured us that as it was getting darker out there, he's going to be getting lighter in our Goshen. So let's examine 3 John 2. We know that God wants us to prosper. He said, beloved, I pray that you may prosper. In Isaiah 48:17, God actually wants us to profit. So he teaches us to profit and leads us. He doesn't want us to be in debt. Also, he wants us to have all sufficiency. In 2 Corinthians 9:8, said God is able to make all grace abound towards us, that we always have all sufficiency. We serve a God of Jireh. We serve provider, right? So that's God's perspective. What is the truth of God's word? The first thing is, yeah, financial distress is a choice. Getting into debt was not a choice, but staying there and being distressed is actually a choice. Your financial position is a sum total of your thoughts. In Proverbs, it says that as a man or woman thinketh, so is he. So therefore, what we need to do is we need to continue to renew our minds with the word of the Lord. Our thoughts and influence, what are our beliefs about money? What are our beliefs around debt? Because we know that actually debt is a spirit. So if you believe, well, debt is nothing, you will never get out of it. But once you made up your mind that, you know what, this is not the word of the Lord, you know, I should not lack anything, then you think better. So your beliefs actually influence your actions. So what you believe will influence how you are going to act. So we've been through the truths, you know, the word of the Lord. Now we're going to talk about the myths concerning money. Savings, I can save later. That is not true. If you've been on these webinars that we started back in July, even investment decision, everything we always say, start from where you are. There's no time like today. So we should always start from where we are. Cars, old cars are not as safe as new. That's not true. That's not true at all. Because we had in the money dollars, that's in most cases, millionaire dollars, that in most cases, the millionaires, their cars are actually like 4 to 6 years old with 41,000 miles. So if millionaires are buying old cars, what is our own? So unless we're using it for business. Age, I'm too old to win with money. That is not true. Like we said, you know, we need to focus on the word of the truth. We're never too old to start. Credit score will prevent me from moving forward. Well, credit score is just, I love debt score. It should not prevent us, it should not stop us from what we want to do. We continue to work on it and continue to improve on it until it gets better. Tax, why should I have more money? Inland revenue, we take it. Well, there are many tax efficiency savings and schemes that we can get involved that are not illegal. So if you miss some of the webinars that we treated tax, we talked about tax. I think that was the last one. you can always ask for a copy of the recording from the church office. If I have more money, there'll be no debt, I make more money. That's not true. I beg to differ, because like I said, I shared with you earlier on, I'm actually an accountant and I earn good money, still do. And I was in debt. In fact, the more you earn, the more you spend, because you now have a high taste, you acquire high taste. And you'll be shocked that people that are actually on high figure salary, they're the ones that are actually in debt. Right, journey to financial freedom starts with an MOT. What do you mean by MOT? Just like you do an MOT for your car, we need to conduct an MOT, because if you don't know where you are going, it's like you don't have a map. You couldn't get anywhere. Net worth statement, I'm not going to say much about that because Deji has already showed us what is an asset, what is a liability. So our net worth is actually what I remember 12 years ago when I did it. I had a lot of liabilities. I cried and cried, Spending plan, budget, plan. We know that if we fail to plan, we have planned to fail. So it's very important that we have a plan. What do we have? Again, financial freedom. It starts again from switching on the lights. Where is money going, which is part of the plan. It's actually a tragedy when you are in the dark concerning the issues that is affecting your lives, especially when it comes to finances. We know how emotional we can get when it comes to money. We should explore what options. We need to understand what are the options that are available to get out of debt, to get out of financial distress. Where do we need to go? And then we need to devise a plan. We need to have a goal and develop a plan, because if, like we said earlier on, if you don't know where you are going, anywhere we do. And remember, mine was to get out of debt, to get out of financial distress before I was 50. It took me a number of years, but to the glory of God today, I am where I am. I'm not there yet, but I'm not where I used to be. So it's important that we stick to the plan. So this is a spending plan. And that's what it is, basically. It's a budget, it's a typical budget template. So what it does is it helps us, it's like a roadmap to our finances. It helps us to identify sources of our income, assets, like Deji taught us earlier on. Anything that is bringing money in is assets. And that's what we want to, we want that we want to have more of money coming in than expenditure. So the budget template, like I said, consists of your income coming in and then the expenditure. So it's actually, this is weird, switching the lights on, because it's amazing, when you put paper and pen and write down where your money is going. Again, it will tell you. It's very amazing. Okay. Right, priority debts. So we're going to go through the two types of debts, priority debts and non-priority debts, like Deji said earlier on. So we can actually, we've classified all categories of debts into two categories. Priority debts. Why do we call them priority debts? That's because they have priority. They have priority. And what we know them by the acronym Pay Them First. The T is for council tax. And the reason why they have priority is because they have consequences attached to them. If we don't pay them, there are consequences, there are prices to be paid. Council tax, if you're behind with your council tax and you don't pay it and you don't make any effort, you could end up in jail. Hire purchase, if you buy something in hire purchase and you're behind with the payments and you don't have any arrangements in place, they could take it back and you're still liable for the payment. Electricity and gas. Yes, the utility company may not be able to cut you off, but they will install a meter, pay as you go meter, which means that you cannot use anything until you've paid for it. And in most cases, the tariffs for those kind of pay as you go are quite very expensive, because every debt that you pay, they make sure that they deduct it as soon as you charge your machine. Maintenance and child support. Yep. I remember they call them child support agency. They're not playing. at all, because it's like you are owing government as well, because government is maintaining your child. They could actually apply for a deducting order from your employer. So you can imagine, very embarrassing. So the payroll team where you work, they will know that you're not maintaining your child, and therefore government is asking for them to say, before you get paid, they send money to them, or you could even end up in jail. Same thing with fines. If you have a fine that you don't pay it, you will be multiplying and multiplying. The next thing you know, bailiffs or court officers knocking on your door, embarrassing you. Income tax, again, if you don't pay your income tax, Her Majesty will be after you. Rent and mortgage, the consequence is you become homeless. You lose your home, your home will be repossessed, or you could be evicted from your dwelling. Second mortgage, yes, it does have an impact as well. It's just like mortgage that you've secured on your property, so you could lose your property. Same thing, television license. I mean, as small as it is, they could fine you up to £1,000. Can you imagine? Because of 150, you get a fine for £1,000, or you even could end up in jail if you don't cooperate with them. Non-priority debts. Well, that's because they have no consequences. They had not, we call them bad debts. Those are the things like overdrafts, personal loans, banks or building society loans, all those credit cards. Credit card is not a priority debt. I mean, I remember then, I thought credit card was a priority debt. I had to pay my credit card so that I could continue to use it. So can you imagine? Payday loans is not priority debt. But at the end of the day, we still don't, the Bible says that we should not owe anyone anything but love. So yes, we still want to pay them. So we don't have in mind that, oh, I'm not going to pay it. It's a bad debt. It's not priority debt. No, we should always make attempts to settle our debts. So if we happen to be behind with any of these debts, this is the steps that we normally advise people to go through. This is what I did when I was going through my stuff then. We call it ABCDE strategy. What is A? A is for advice. Contact organizations where you can get advice. Because there are organizations out there, Christian Against Poverty. You have pay plan. Contact them. Citizen Advice Bureau, they're all free. Contact them to help you out. Budget again. We can't say enough about budgets, because that is the only way you can prove that, I can't afford this thing. Not that I don't want to pay it, but here is my budget. This is what I've got. Because that's the first thing they will ask you to do. The third thing is contact lenders, contact your creditors, speak to them. We should not bury our heads in sand, pretending that it's not happening, not opening letters. I remember, like in those days, on a Monday, I wouldn't open letters because I knew they were all from creditors. So I said, oh, I don't want to start the week with the bad news, but it is important. We cannot keep putting those letters away. We need to open them to know where we are. D is to discuss. So you need to contact the lenders, contact your advisors, discuss with them, tell them where you are coming from. They're quite, especially during this period, because they know that things are hard. During this COVID, government has actually got a lot of initiatives like mortgage holiday payments. If you can't really afford it, if you're really struggling, credit card holiday payments, payment holiday rather, sorry. And the fifth thing, E, is embargo on credit cards. Freeze those cards. As soon as you started struggling with payments, embargo. Do not carry on while you are there. Stop digging. So you should stop mounting up the debts. Stop using those credit cards. Some nasties about credit cards. 0% interest rate date. Make sure there are a lot of adverts out there that, oh, come and apply for credit card, it's 0%. Make sure that before the date expires, you've paid it off. Otherwise, they will start working interest on it. You'll be incurring a lot of interest. Minimum payments each month. If you continue to make minimum payments every month, it was going to take forever, because what you are doing is that you're actually paying interest. The capital is unpaid. So the capital will just be rolling on. credit limit increase. When your credit card company and write to you and say, oh, we're increasing your limit, it means that you have been a good customer. They are making money from you. Because in most cases, if you're not using your credit limits, they would start reducing it. Then you're not using your credit card, they'll start reducing it. So if you get a letter from your company, from your credit company and said, we are increasing your limit, just, it means they're making money. So you don't have to take it if you don't need it. Sudden change or increase in APR. What do we mean by APR? This is the cost of debt. So what is the interest? When they want to change the interest on your cost of debt, normally this is what we call small prints. They don't make it bold, so they don't want people to read it. So they write it very, very tiny. Everything else, all your other letters will be in bold. But when it comes to where they're changing the interest rate, you will see that it's very small print. So it's important that we keep on and look at it. Right. So this afternoon, we're going to go through 2 strategies of debt terminator. The first one is snowball, and the second one is avalanche. Snowballing focus on debt with lowest interest rate, and avalanche focus on debt with highest interest rate. So I'm going to play a video now to explain what snowballing is, so that we can get the idea.
When I was a kid growing up, I used to love being out in the snow, playing in it, having snowball fights, building snowmen, whatever. Now, as any kid can tell you, there are 2 ways to build a snowman. You can grab handfuls of snow, build him from the ground up like a nincompoop, or you can roll a small snowball around the yard, and before you know it, voila, snow torso, then lather, rinse, repeat, and add 2 sticks and a carrot. Dave Ramsey's philosophy of the debt snowball works on the same principle. You can try to eliminate your debt handfuls at a time, or you can allow your debt payments to snowball and you can beat your debt down like that pleated high water wearing clarinet player after gym class. Here's how it works. Step 1 is to find $200 in your budget that isn't designated for anything. How will you find $200? That's entirely up to you. Sell something, sell anything you don't need, like your weightlifting set or your Monogram Polydine diabetes baking kit. Maybe you need to eliminate your cable TV, dining out, or your $4.50 a day morning dose of price gouging, disappointingly tasteless caffeine. Now that you have that, your next step is to list all your debts in increasing order of how much you owe. In this example, we have $450 owed to Lowe's for the new grill that you just had to have, $650 for Target for your shoes, your belt, and your purse, the essential matching set, and your flat screen TV. Then there's a $1,600 you owe to your parents for that time your transmission went out on your sweet vintage 98 Accord, and so on. Make a list of all the debts you have, lowest to highest. The next step is where the snowball starts. We're going to pay the minimum payment on all the debts, for now, except the one with the smallest balance. For the Lowe's card, we'll pay the minimum payment of $50, plus the $200 that we found. So guess what? After 2 months of paying $250, your Lowe's debt is gone. Next, we'll take that $250 you were paying Lowe's and snowball it into the minimum payment of your Target card. So now we are paying $280 a month, and after a couple more months, just like magic, your Target card is paid off. You continue this process each time, snowballing your old payments into your new payments like Buddy the Elf. And before long, all your debts are gone. Now, an important thing to note is that during this process, you have to keep the snowball rolling for it to work. So no matter how much you love that new Urban Outfitters overpriced dress, or the toolbox, or that new TV to replace the one you smashed in a fit of anger after stupid Kobe missed that stupid game-winning free throw after, oh my goodness, why did the Lakers suck so bad this year? You have to wait. The debt snowball is the fastest, most effective way to tackle a lot of debt and pay it off quickly. Using the examples we had, if you were to pay the minimum balance on all the loans you had, it would take you 120 months before the debt was paid. That is 10 years. 10 years of playing Jean Valjean to the bank's Inspector Javert. But if you use the debt snowball, you can have all these debts paid off in just 21 months. That's less than 2 years. That's 99 more months of freedom. And Additionally, if you take that $1,100 that you were snowballing and invest it at 8% interest for those 99 months, you'd have $153,000. So let's do this like Pastor used to do. Take the debt, roll it up, and smoke it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is that clear? So the debt avalanche method way is to pay down is definitely opposite of snowballing. This is where you focus on the highest interest rates first, rather than lower one. So what are the pros and cons of snowballing versus avalanche? Snowballing, psychological benefits of seeing results sooner. As you can see, how those debts were disappearing. Building momentum because you're getting rid of the debts quicker. Yep. So you just go for it. You just attack it before there's some snow in your hands. The reduction in the number of lenders owed money, which will be very encouraging, and motivation, which leads to people paying off debts between 18 to 24 months. What are the cons? You probably end up paying more on debt because you're focusing on the small balances, which probably does not attract a lot of interest. And also sometimes it could take longer to clear debts overall if the smallest one happens to be the cheapest to finance. What are the advantages of avalanche? You pay less on interest because you're actually paying off the highest interest and highest balances first, and then you pay up your debts quicker. But what are the cons? Well, it takes toll on motivation because those debts are not just shifting, and especially you need a lot of money to be able to throw at it to actually see the difference, and also not able to see light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I know that the video that we watched earlier on was in dollars, but it's just the principle that we are talking about. So you could always apply it to pounds or naira, whatever it is that we are doing. We could always apply it to that. Okay. The joy is that there are a lot of debt management apps that are available now that I definitely did not know about them 12 years ago. So there's so many things that you can do to actually see where you are, the way you to track all the debts, everything ready, frozen, pay off debts. So we're going to send this to you as part of the slides. So you can, maybe try one or two of them to see where you are, see what results will give to you. Okay. So which strategy? Well, like we said, personal debt is personal. So it is up to you. But those are the things to consider when you're thinking of what do you want to do. Number one, do the math first. What is the implication financially? Number two, dig into the numbers. Is it something you can afford? What can you do? Make the rational choice. Don't go into it emotionally, otherwise it's not going to long. You get fed up if it's to do with emotional, if you're not determined. Keep tab on motivation level, like we said, the motivation is what do I focus on your goal? What do I really want to achieve out of this? I want to create wealth. I want to be a wealth creator. Focus on one account at a time, because if you're trying to snowball 2 accounts, you might not be able to keep at it. And lastly, make sure you stick to the plan. It is important. We say no pain, no gain is what we say. And we know that there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. In 1 Peter 5:10, he said, after we've suffered a little while, the grace of God will strengthen us. Right, so we heard about Lara earlier on, and Lara has attended a number of webinars that we've had in the past, and now she has a dilemma. So she's approached us like, all these webinars, all those teachings that you've been doing, I actually want to make use of it. What can you do? Can you help me? Income, Lara has got annual salary of 30,000. Her monthly take home is 2,033. Expenses is 1,829.70. She has a savings of 203.30. She's a good saver. She had us telling her in the last webinars, that we need to save, we need to have something for the rainy day. Priority, she has a priority debt of 1,000. She has a non-priority debt of 8,250. When we look at her budget, we see how much she's actually using to service her debts. She has 1,000 overdraft, but the dilemma she has now is her salary is actually going to be reduced. So our employer has spoken to her and said, you know what, we don't want to make you redundant, but what we are proposing to do is to reduce your salary by 25%. So she's facing a pay cut. So if we look at her budget, like we said, her income is 2,000. She doesn't have any investment, but she has priority expenses, which comes to 1,520, rent, travel, utilities, food. Our tithes are offering. Yes, that is essential. I mean, this was a defining moment for me. You know, what actually made me to go for help was when I did my budget and I couldn't put tithes nor offering. I'm like, this is not right. The guilt, like, no, I cannot have this. All the teachings that, you know, if anything happens in the house, maybe the washing machine broke down, like, oh God, because I didn't pay my tithes, the guilt. So that was a defining moment. The lights, that was when the lights actually switched on, like, I cannot continue like this. I've got to give God his own. And that was when I sought advice. Expenses non-essential, 300. Those are entertainment, Netflix, Prime, you know, those kind of things. And she has her savings. So what she has approached us to do, the first thing we will do is we will look at her expenses, because obviously she needs to reduce her expenses, because even her essential expenses is more than how much she's going to be getting now. So she needs to cut down on entertainment. So she will review her budget and everything. Entertainment, no, she doesn't need it. The free few. She doesn't need the gym. She can always go for a walk and everything. Gift donations, you know, she needs to review that. If you're in trouble, you don't give money. So those are the kind of things that we advise Laura to do. Even insurance, to do go to compare sites. So can she get it cheaper? Even food, 250 is a lot. Can she go to the cheaper supermarkets and get her food and everything? So when we went through Laura's budget, we were able to find some money that she can actually use to snowball against that 8,250 debts that she scored. So we took Lara through snowballing, and we were able to help Lara to pay off her debts within 18 months using snowball method. Things to be aware of: consolidation loans. You know, in most cases, there's some banks will approach you to ask you to come and take some consolidation loans. You need to watch it. You need to be able to know if this is good for you. But in most cases, people that take consolidation loans, if they're not disciplined, this is you transferring all the debt from credit cards to one single payment loan. People always end up using those credit cards again and get into trouble. So make sure that it's right for you. If you can freeze those cards and just face one payment, good for you. But if not, don't go for it. Debt management companies. You need to explore what options do you have. We talked about it in terms of looking for options. Some debt management companies, they will charge you fees. I mean, you don't want to be paying debt management as well as paying your debts. So there are free ones. So make sure you do your research. Bankruptcy and IVAs. Bankruptcy, yes, some people it might be the best option for some people, but just know what you're getting yourself into, because you could lose your home, because what you're saying is, I don't have any asset. So truly, they could take everything that you have before you get bankruptcy. And then what are the consequences as a professional, like solicitors or accountants? That is not even an option. You can't do that. Otherwise, you'll be free. You know, they will strike you off your professional, and you might not be able to get a job. Because nowadays, if you're applying to work in the finance sector, they do a credit search. So we need to be aware of what are our options. And again, lastly, we have IVAs. We call it individual voluntary arrangements. This is where you agree with your creditors that I'm going to be paying this as long as you keep at it. But like I said, we need to know what our options are. Okay, so Lara is now out of debt. This was my dance, when I got out of that debt. We call it I'm out of debt dance. And what it's important that you check you are actually responsible for all your debts. A father is not responsible for his children's debts unless he signed an agreement, so you cannot inherit a dead person's debt. M is make a list where whenever you have to go shopping and stick to it, only buy on a cash basis. We say cash is king. Understand the agreements you are getting into or signing. You must be clear about every single penny that you are going to pay in future. Talk to your creditors. Communication, like I said, we said, discuss, contact. Talk to your creditors. Communication is very important so that they are aware of your situation, because if they are not aware of your situation, they cannot help you. Open all the correspondence from your creditors. Ignoring them will not make the problem go away. You know, a lot of people do that. They won't smell the coffee. We need to wake up and smell the coffee. Fish around for best deals. Obtain 1 or 2 quotations to compare prices before making any purchases. D, devise a plan to start saving regularly, no matter how small the amount. It is important. We've heard about this from all the previous webinars that we've been doing. No matter how, you know, we call it pay yourself first. As soon as you get paid, even if it's only 20 pounds, you're paying yourself. Educate yourself. E is for educate yourself and members of your family. B is be aware of BOGOs, buy now, pay later, and small prints. Thoroughly scrutinize your bank and credit card statements and monitor your accounts. You know, sometimes you have subscriptions that should have been canceled ages ago that you don't even use anymore, and you continue to pay for it. So it's important that we do this. So this takes us to the end of debt section. And as in Luke 22:32, where Jesus said to Peter that when you are back, when you return, strengthen your brethren. I hope that I have strengthened you this afternoon if you happen to be going through what I went through 12 years ago. And just like where I am today, I pray that, you know, you get there in Jesus' mighty name. So I'm going to hand you over to Mrs. Onyilola now, who is going to talk us through the next session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lady Billy. And hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. We hope that you have been thoroughly enriched by everything that you've learned from Lady Billy today. So I am going to start, I'm going to share with you some of the things that would help us going forward. Debt by any nature doesn't have color, it doesn't know people, it doesn't know gender or religion. And it can be a worrying thing. We thank God that we've learned now that there's solution. Whether priority or non-priority debts, they both have consequences. Non-priority debts, their consequences are really on your credit score. And so you need to be mindful of that. And I know that in some professions, if you've had you can have county court judgments against you. And I know in some companies where I've worked before, if you've had a county court judgment against you, you would not be allowed to keep that position. However, there's good news that we've learned now how to come out of debt. And this section here is going to we're going to talk about how we stay out of debt. We've heard that 227,000 people were made redundant between June and August. We've also heard that unemployment is expected to double and the economy is expected to shrink. And so all of these uncertainties have caused mental health issues and to be at its highest. Money worries create mental health issues. So I saw this this clip on this little thing on LinkedIn, and I thought it would be really good to share it, because when I reflected on myself, on my journey on money and wealth creation, I used to be in debt based on I get paid and I was always overdrawn. And there was a time in my life, in my 20s, I can't even imagine what I was thinking, where I actually wanted to commit suicide, because I just felt the only way out is to just kill myself. Because so money worries by themselves are not really good. So we're going to talk about the Brown family, because how we all love ourselves, right? Because the Bible says we should love our neighbors as ourselves. And we've heard that God wishes that we prosper. So it's all about looking after our physical, because when we're exercising and we're sleeping well, we're not going to be stressed. And also we learn how to manage our stress, because I find out that when we're stressed, one of the things that we sometimes do is that when the going gets tough, guess what? The tough go shopping. And the other added thing that we need to be aware of is social media. We need to have boundaries on the social media, because we're always on Instagram or TikTok and we see a 20-year-old size 8 wearing something superb and we just want to go and buy it. Then what that does, it creates money stresses, which might have an impact on our money and our finances. And also I'm a person of faith, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And for all of us, there's, even if you're not a follower of Jesus Christ, like I am, whatever your spiritual thing is, we need to spend time in prayer and meditation, because it helps us keep our level of stress down and also keeps focus. We've also need to think about creativity as well and having goals for ourselves. So have that personal space for yourself and creativity. And also think about your environment at home, keeping it clean and stable, and keeping a tab on finances and having boundaries. And also nowadays we'll say boundaries at work. So now that we've said all of that, so wealth creation, we all want to be millionaires, I hope, or have enough money or to live on. And we can't do anything about the past. So if you're here today and you're thinking, I wish I'd known all of that Lady Billy was talking about, we can't do anything about the past. But the good news is we can do something about the future. We can control the future, and our future can only be but bright, because there are great things that we can do to plan for success. So I'm just going to share something that I want you to eavesdrop, because Lara's spoken about, okay, now that I've learned all these tips, I'm going to use the snowballing method. I'm going to pay off my loan in 19 months. And Lara, having heard that video, listened to that video where she saw that somebody actually could save $153,000 it was in, but she was thinking that's £153,000 that she could actually use that to buy our home. How can she keep herself from getting back into debt? Because we get into debt because of our habits. And if we don't change our habits, we will get back in there. And so the first thing for Lara and for us is to understand that God owns everything. Deuteronomy 8:18 says that it is God that gives us the power to get wealth. And this is an interesting one. Psalms 24:1 says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So we are in the earth. So everything that we own belongs to God. So, and if we know that it belongs to God, we need to be asking God on what we should do with money and how we should spend money. And of all the scriptures I've seen in the Bible about debt, there's only one that's actually positive. Actually, I've seen 10, and only one spoke about debt in a positive manner. So God doesn't want us to get into debt. So when we understand that from his perspective, then we will be able to spend money wisely. The second thing is to develop a culture of forward planning. We've said it before, to fail to plan is to plan to fail. In Luke 14:28, Jesus said, for which of you intending to build a tower does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he's able to finish it? Your budget is a way to help you forward plan. Because if you don't forward plan, if you won't know where your money is going, and therefore it goes anywhere. And then the third thing is make a commitment to keep good records. Proverbs 24:3-4, I like it in the New Living Translation because it says, we profit wonderfully by keeping abreast of the facts. So when you keep good records, you can control your finances, as you will know where they're going. Did you know that 80% of the UK population don't keep good records? Shocking, right? And then you've got the 20% who keep good records, and the first 10% of the 20% are the people who are high earners, who really don't need to budget. So they keep records, but they keep it at a very high level, because they know that if they run into money problems, they just need to make a few adjustments and they'll be fine. Then you've got the other 10% who are kind of very prudent and they're kind of frugal, and they know how much they spend all the time. They keep a tab on every single detail. If you ask those people in that 10% bracket, what was the last thing you spent today? They will tell you to the nearest penny. So we need to make a commitment to keep good records. And then we need to commit to be financially literate. Hosea 4:6 says, it says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. You see, a lot of people are financially illiterate and financially ignorant. And ignorance is not the same as stupidity. Illiteracy is not the same as stupidity. There are a lot of people who are intelligent, yet still ignorant. Because a stupid person doesn't know what to do with information, but an ignorant person does not have information. And a lot of people on this webinar, you guys have made the right step. You're getting you're getting that education you need so that you can ensure that you don't get into debt. And then the other thing is, did you know a lot of people borrow money without actually knowing what it costs? So understand what it's costing you. Understand what an annual percentage rate. We normally hear APR. What is APR? It's the annual percentage rate. And it's the actual yearly cost of a loan, including interest and charges. Usually the lower the rate, the better. We can figure that one out. But remember, your monthly repayment is not the cost, just as your monthly repayment of a car is not the true cost of the car. So you need to know and understand that your income can support the credit facility that you want to get yourself into. And then the other thing is, don't avoid overspending. It's important. Spend less than you earn. And we're going to talk about how we can do that, because if we spend less than we earn, we won't get into debt. So Lara's come to say, okay, fine, I've heard all this, let's get some more tips. And we start by saying, I read this thing that Charles Dickens said in his book, David Copperfield, and he said, annual income, £20, annual expenditure, 19 and 6, result happiness. Annual income, £20, annual expenditure, £20 odd and 6, result misery. The reality is, if we overspend, we will not be happy. So the key to stay out of debt really is about spending less. And in order to do that, you must understand budgets and assets and liability, which is why we're kind of stressing it today. We need to have a budget and we need to understand what assets are and what liabilities are, and the relationship between asset and income and liabilities and expenses. So assets, as we've heard before, generate income. Income puts money in your pocket. Liabilities generate expenses, and expenses take money out of your pocket. So as you're doing your budget, just bear this in mind. And so the way forward to create wealth or not, creating wealth is about having assets which create cash flow. And when we work, we make money to invest money. So as we go along, we're going to share with you some tips to make sure you save enough money so you can invest money. And then if you're a spender, people that don't create wealth, they tend to have liabilities which create debt. And what they do is you work so hard, you make money, but you spend money to service your debt. So you've heard all of this and you're thinking, okay, so what else can I do? Good question. So this is Lara's asking now. Look, I've heard all that. I now know I need to stay out of debt. I'm committed to stay out of debt. But what are some of the things I can do? And we want to present to you what we call life/financial goals. And these goals would help us stay out of trouble. So let's just give you a glimpse of what Lara's come up with. So Lara's saying, actually, within a year, so we've broken it down into short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. So Lara's saying, do you know what? I'm going to pay off my debt in a year. And yes, I know that you guys have helped me out. And if I do snowballing, I can pay off my debt in 19 months. But I also know that you guys are about to do this multiple income stream. So I'm going to learn, and Solomon is attending that with your colleagues. So I think we'll be able to pay off this debt earlier. She also wants to build up savings of at least £10,000, start her own business. And she's heard about her skills at intellectual property. So she wants to upskill so that she can have another asset which can generate income for her. Where you go, Lara, well done. She's a good student. And the next thing is her medium-term goals is she's saying, look, I want to build an orphanage in Africa. I want to support 1,000 widows during Christmas. I want to travel to 40 countries by 40. Bear in mind, she's 27, so she's got time. And I want to make $1 million from my business that I'm starting in year 1. By year 3, I want it to make $1 million. By year 4, I want it to make $2 million. And I know some of you might be saying, Lara, why are you dreaming so big? It can't happen. Dreams are free. Feel free to dream as big as you want. And her long-term goal is to become a millionaire by 40 and to build schools in emerging markets. So the first thing is we want you to develop your dream list. So we want you to take a few seconds and just ponder and think about what are some of the things you want to do. Could it be that you also want to pay off your mortgage soon? Could it be that you want to start saving up for your children's private tuition? Could it be that you're planning to have a baby soon? Or actually buying your own house or investing in multiple properties? So we would like to recommend that you think about that now and quickly jot it down on your phone and give yourself a time scale to develop your own financial goals. And while you're doing that, let's talk about we've told you about some shocking statistics on debt. Let's give you some shocking statistics on savings. Did you know that 1/3 of Brits have less than £600 in savings? 1 in 10 actually has no savings. And the average Brit has 6,756.81 saved. However, a lot of people don't even have that much. And bearing in mind, experts recommend that people should have 3 months of expenses saved up. And 40.93% of Brits don't have enough savings to live on just a month without income. And if we roll back to the fact that 227,000 people were made redundant between June and August 2020, this is not a good place to be. And we need to change that story. We need to make sure that we're not one of these statistics. And let me give you saving statistics by generation. This might shock you as well. So start from the silent generation and going all the way to Generation Z. And for some people who are thinking, which ones are the silent generations? They're the ones that they call them silent probably because they don't talk much now, because there were people born before 1946. They have got £9,497.96 saved, whereas Generation Z, people born after 1996 only have on average, right, have 2,530.71. And I can hear you say, well, Generation Z, they're young, so this should be okay. Let's look at the millennials or Generation X. The people that need less savings, which are the silent generation, they get the Freedom Pass, they get a lot of freebies, they don't have to pay for medication, they've paid off their mortgage, they have more savings than people that really need more. So we need to look for ways to not be part of this statistics, have higher savings. And one of the ways to make sure that we have savings and stay out of debt is to avoid overspending, right? And so just a quick thing to give you to think about, how can I avoid overspending? And the key to achieve your goal, remember, always starts with avoiding overspending. So once you build your goal, your dream list, you need to avoid overspending. So we need to find ways to reduce the total expenses and also make sure you invest all extra cash wisely whilst looking for additional ways of making money, which you will find out later on in this series. So the first thing is to to find the leaks, because when you need to track your finances to determine if there are leaks. And a good way is to use apps to track your spendings, which we'll talk about later. Then once you've found out where the leaks are, you need to stop those leaks, because like if you have water running somewhere, you've blocked the leak. Then the next thing is you need to place embargo on credit cards. Remove credit cards from your Amazon account. Yes, remove them. Use debit cards instead, or prepaid credit cards. Perform plastic surgery on your credit cards if you have to, because if you don't spend, if you would not overspend. Also develop sales resistance. See, I say keep yourself out of social media, because that's where it comes from. Black Friday. You don't need to be spending any money. The pandemic has taught us that we don't need a lot of things we buy. For most of us, I haven't bought an outfit since this year. I don't even think, because I've been home since March, and most of us just put on our jogging bottoms and put on a top and just a blazer, just does that. So this has taught us that we don't need to be spending. And then finally, check your motives. Always check your motives. What do I need this thing? And so we're going to take you through some of the things that you can use to help you think twice before you spend. It will help you think about your motives, and also help you think about developing sales resistance as well. And the first one, I don't know if you guys have heard of the monetary equivalent label chart. And what that does is it helps you put a reality check before you spend money. And when you get the slides, you will see the link. And I want to encourage everyone to use that every time you want to buy something that's costing you maybe about £50 or even £100 or more. Okay, so Lara's got, as we know, her salary has been reduced to 22,500, and Lara's thinking, okay, now I want to get out of debt, and I want to stay out of debt, and I want to pay off I want to make sure that I pay off my debt in 19 months, as we've worked out using snowballing. And so Lara's dilemma, she's got a wedding in December, and so she needs to buy £370. She needs to spend £370 on shoes, bags, her outfit, her makeup artist, all the works. And so how many days do you think she would need to work to pay for the item? Right? Because there's this salary calculator, which is really neat. And what it does for those who reside in the UK, if you know what your tax code is, it will put that in for you. If you don't know your tax code, it will kind of assume that you're on the normal tax code rate based on your salary. So how long do you think Lara will have to work for to pay for this 1 day of pleasure that she wants to go and enjoy a wedding? And weddings are good, but let's find out, right? I wonder how many is it? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days? That 1 day of pleasure would take 1 week plus of Lara's salary, weekly salary. And that's because her weekly salary is £364.23. And Lara has debt to pay. So spend or not to spend, decision time for Lara. So we want you guys to play around with this. Make it fun. Don't make it so tedious that you just won't use it. Just have it on your phone, and every time you want to spend something, just quickly use this app. And it will help you to make the decision of spend or not to spend. And the next one is the latte factor, and this one, and what David Birch says about the latte factor is that it helps us rethink the way we spend on the small stuff. And he recommends that we think about any regular inessential expenses we may have, like the morning coffee or overpriced lunch, and consider which might be worth cutting back on. Because if you invest what you save, that money could grow, he points out, thanks to compounded interest. So Lara's guilty pleasure is having a double latte and muffin every day, right? And so we worked out for Lara, like, Lara, that £5 a day is £150 a month. For a year, it's 1,800. And so we were like, Lara, did you know that's costing you £18,000 for 10 years without compounded interest. So we said, Lara, let's think about that £5 a day you're spending. And let's think about maybe if you invest it and you're able to get let's say you can get 3% interest on that. Did you know that with that £5, you could actually make £3,000 extra on that? So you could end up having 21,240. So, is that real price tag? Is that what's spending that much money on? Lara's thinking, no, we can do HMO or multiple letting. We can do anything with this and invest in it. So every time we just want to encourage you, before you spend, what are your guilty pleasures that you have? And it's not about trying to take all these nice things away from you. It's just thinking about those things that you might be able to do away with, like the double latte. You can do your own at home. Just go on YouTube. YouTube now is quite good because it teaches you how to do all these things for much less. So now that we've spoken about 2 tips of ways you can go about checking your spending so that you can save more, let's talk about some financial responsible strategy principles. And there are 2 that we're going to talk about today. The first one is the 50-30-20 rule. And Harvard bankruptcy expert Elizabeth Warren, actually, she's named one of the Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world in 2010. She coined this 50-30-20 rule for spending and saving with her daughter, Amelia Warren Tygate. And what it says is that we should spend 50% of our net income on essentials. And Lady Billy kind of explained what essentials are. Essentials are things that you really need. So they don't include like makeup. We might want to have makeup, but we don't really need them. Some people might need them. And then you've got 30% on non-essentials. And then it says 20% into your savings pot. And what we want to recommend that you do is actually pay yourself first. So divide this into your bank, into 3 different bank pots so that you can save them, put them into different pots and use them as you need to. Because if you don't put them in different bank accounts, what would happen is you won't stick to this rule. And for Lara, for example, on an annual income of 22,500, which is a monthly income of 1,578, she should only be spending £789 on essentials and £473 on non-essentials. And her savings really should be £315.67. And the next one that we want to talk to you about is the Dave Ramsey's baby step. And Dave Ramsey, he's the one that popularized the snowballing. And he's given 7 baby steps. And the first one is to have €1,000, it says $1,000 because it's an American, but £1,000, €1,000 in an emergency fund. And the reality is emergencies do happen. You go and service your car, they tell you need to fix something. You've got your burst water pipe, something happens that you need to spend money on. And that account, you need to take that £1,000 and put it in a special account and name it emergency fund. And when you utilize money from that fund, we want you to go back and make sure that you keep it always at £1,000. Baby step number 2 is to pay off your debt. And we've shown you 2 ways of paying them off, the avalanche and the snowballing. Research has shown that people that use snowballing tend to stick with it, and on average they come out of debt within 24 months. So we want to recommend that people use that strategy to come out of debt. And the third one is David Ramsey recommends that we save 3 to 6 months expenses. This amount, as you're saving it as you're going along, please put it in a separate account, because if you don't, when people come and say, could you loan me £1,000 or £500, you would loan them, and then therefore it defeats the purpose of you having this savings pot of your expenses. And then the next one is to invest 15% in tax favored accounts. And we've talked about the SIPs and the ISAs from all the seminar webinars you've been on. So have your own, and also in your pension. The next one talks about build fund for your children, which is baby step 5. Nowadays, education is not free. So we need to be thinking about how can we save money for our children going forward. And the sixth one is pay off home early, which we spoke about on one of the webinars, and how can we pay off our home early. And finally, to build wealth. And you will learn more about that when we get to multiple streams of income. And now I'm just going to quickly talk to you about the various money management technologies, because you've heard all of this and you're thinking, keeping track on finances is going to be overwhelming, tedious, or just plain boring. That's the reality, it is boring sometimes. However, it's an important thing to do for you to be able to achieve your financial goals. So there are many apps out there, but I've seen, these are the 5 ones that have been recommended, and I'll go through them quickly. And the first one is Clio. And Clio is like, it uses AI technology and it talks to you like a real person. You can ask her questions via the app or Facebook, and she'll respond as if you're texting a friend. This makes her very the user experience more fun. And it also runs a blog, and it has a money diary section, and it's FCA regulated. And also Clio also talks to you about your own spending habits, so you can find out what you're spending money on, what your latte factor is. The other one is Plum. Plum was launched quite recently in 2016, about 4 years ago, and it also offers the same AI technology that Clio offers. The one thing I like about Plum is Plum actually, with your permission, would save your spare change without you noticing. And so before you know, you've saved £1,000. It also has quirky challenges and saving modes, and it does investment for beginners. The next one that's also a good one is called Emma. And Emma offers, it actually helps you set budgets and tracks your accounts in one place, including your investments and pensions. And it also helps you count down to payday so that you know exactly when your salary is coming in. And also, it also helps you organize your direct debits around your payday. The next one is the Money Hub. And Money Hub is a good one because Money Hub helps you find all those subscriptions that you've forgotten about, and it helps you cancel them. And finally, we've got Snoop. And Snoop is a good one because Snoop it keeps a beady eye on your bills and sends you a notification if it thinks you can save money elsewhere. And it also finds vouchers for places you've shopped before. Quite neat, isn't it? So that's all we're covering in this section. Now I'm going to pass you over to Deji, who's going to take us through the multiple streams of income.
Okay, thank you very much, Lady T. That concludes the debt management section, and now we're going to move on to multiple income streams. I started this webinar with statements: rich people acquire assets, poor and middle class people acquire liabilities that they think are assets. And I hope, as you've been through the debt management section, understand more of your financial situation, understand your balance sheets, that you can see that this statement rings very, very true. So focus on building your assets and reducing your liabilities. And that's where we're going to go on to now. How do you monetize a key asset on your balance sheets, which is yourself? So let me introduce 11 ways to create multiple streams of income. You can create a YouTube video, you can write an ebook, you can also get cashback rewards on your credit card, sell exciting products on the internet, and I could go on and on. But what's fascinating about this is, as much as this rings true, the problem with this is many people start. They build an app, and let's say the app is not successful, or they start an online course and it's not going well, they tend to give up. The issue with this is it doesn't factor in what you love to do, what you want to do. And so I prefer to take a different approach to building multiple streams of income. The Bible says that a man's gifts, talent, or skills makes room for him or her and brings him or her before great men and women. So remember, if this is all you remember about this section, one of the first things you need to understand is that God has given you gifts to use for his glory. So I hope that we will be able to show you how to go about doing this. So let's take a different approach, a skills-based approach. And to build a concept that I'm going to introduce to you, which is the ultimate skill, okay? We'll follow 5 steps, 5 very simple steps, not complicated at all. The first one is to identify your skills. Identify your skills that you enjoy using and that you have. The second one is to discover the ideal. You know, Lady T mentioned that dreams are free. Dream your ideal. Think about yourself in an end state. Where do you see yourself? Ask yourself from within, ask people, your friends, etc., etc. 3, select something, focus on 1 or 2 areas that you have a very strong interest in, because this is what will stop you from dropping the ball when things get challenging or not as exciting as it was when you started. Number 4, validates, validates, and validates. Meet people in your network, outside of your network, find out more information about the thing that you're interested in. And last but not least, which Dr. Jason will elaborate on and flesh out a bit more, is the execution. So as much as it's all great to have a plan, you have to execute as well. So go for it and get it done. So let's begin. First, I want to define what an ultimate skill is, because I appreciate this is a new concept that we're introducing to you. So an ultimate skill combines these 3 basic skills. The first one is a transferable skill, which is simply, what do you like doing? So you have a skill, you like doing X, that becomes your transferable skill. The second skill is a self-management skill. So how do you do it? What is your style? This is less about the thing that you're doing, but actually how you bring yourself into it to get the job or the task done. And then the final one is the job content skill. So which tools, knowledges do you use to do it? And these are things that you acquire along the way. Research actually shows that each one of us, and I think this is very exciting, have between 3 to 7 ultimate skills. So if you package these 3 skills, you form 1 ultimate skill, and we'll show you what that means. So there's lots to be excited about here, because you can land on 3, 4 ultimate skills, which gives you a lot of choice around where you want to pivot yourself. And as I mentioned before, when I showed you that list of 11 things that can help you generate multiple streams of income, I think the best sort of definition of an ultimate skill is it's a fine balance between your expertise and your enthusiasm. So it's great to have skills, but actually, if you're not excited about what you do, you tend to drop those things after a while. So think about those 2 worlds colliding to form your ultimate skill. Now, let me give you a couple of examples of an ultimate skill so it brings it more to life. They're short sentences and they're expressed as, for example, she teaches with authenticity and uses computer-generated drawings. So teaches being the transferable skill, what she likes to do, authenticity being her natural style, she doesn't have to force it, and computer-generated skill, maybe she learned that on a job or she took a course, etc., etc. Another one is he negotiates with humor in 5 foreign languages. So you can see negotiation is a skill. Maybe he was a judge or a lawyer. And so negotiation is a skill that he uses. Transferable skill to humor is how he brings about that negotiation to life. And he's obviously very learned in terms of the languages that he speaks. Now, 50% of your success in a job is actually down to your personality traits, which is your self-management skills. So it's important to really take time to think about this, because most of what you're going to do, where you're going to find success, is really down to you. Bring in who you are, your biggest assets, to what it is that you're doing. When I've been through the definition of ultimate skill, let's unpack each of these components in a bit more detail, so at least we have a complete view of our step 1, which is identifying our skills. So self-management skill, as I mentioned before, these are obviously referred to as personality traits. And personality traits are innate, right? You're born with it. They reflect your character, how you think about things, how you feel, how you behave. It's just who you are, basically, in summary. And these things can be developed throughout your life. So even though you're born with something, you can obviously improve on it. It's almost like a muscle that you have. You flex it, you strengthen it, you go to the gym, and you get better at it. So you can improve these skills over time. And the best way to think about a self-management skill is how to express, which is as an adjective. So an adjective is, it defines you, describes you. So for example, we might say, she is creative, she is approachable, or he is very intuitive. Now I'm going to give you 15 seconds on the chat, just throw a few things that people have described you or you feel describes yourself. Just put it on the chat. You are detailed, you are energetic. Just share it with everyone, so that it kind of brings this learning to life a bit. I myself, I am very, or I've been told to be very patient. I'm the middle child of 11 children, and I've had to learn patience along the way, waiting for things, managing up, managing down. Okay, I can see some things coming through on the chat. Now let's go to transferable skills. These are best defined as competencies and talents. So the things that you have, things that you're naturally good at. And again, just like personality traits, these are innate, but as always, can always be developed throughout your life. The difference with transferable skills against self-management skills is transferable skills are expressed as verbs. So they express what you enjoy doing, even if you have very little exposure or expertise in them. So unlike personality traits, they go as an action word, which is she likes to negotiate, or she likes to experiment and try new things. She likes to compare and analyze numbers. They're actually an action word. Now there could be an overlap because someone could be good at organizing, but someone is organized as well. So that's where some of the overlap comes. But generally, that distinction becomes clearer when you use as a verb or as an adjective. So again, in the same vein, throw some things that you like doing on here. I like to build apps. I like to engage in debates. Let's see some of those things on the chat. Okay, very good. And I will move on to the final one, job content skills. And this is purely around knowledge. Unlike the other two, no one is born with knowledge. We acquire knowledge. So this is not innate. And you acquire knowledge in the usual sort of fashion, the way you engage from a young age, the things you enjoy doing at work, in learning institutions. But most of the knowledge we acquire tends to be in a work environment or in a learning institution. So this expresses itself more like she knows about information technology, IT, or he knows about property, or she is very knowledgeable about fashion trends and languages, et cetera, et cetera. So this again speaks more to the knowledge that you have or acquire. Now, again, throw some things on the chat about things that you like or know. I can see people have said about organized, innovative. What are the knowledges that some of us have in this group? I'll give 15 seconds. What do you know? Property, food, yes. Okay, so let's move on to the second and third step. Now this is, you guys already expressed very interesting things, real estate, finance, fashion. Now think about the ideal, right? I mentioned to you, where do you see yourself? And selecting something that you think you can pivot around. So this exercise in and of itself, stage 2 and 3 takes hours, could take days. So we're not going to go through that on the call, but what I'm going to do is land on a few things that I've compiled to just give you an insight into how you go through this process. So this is a skills to jobs mapping, and I'll give you some common examples. You can see the personality traits here. very organized, very orderly, likes to arrange, get things in order, put things in a way that appears very, very good and easy on the eye, or very good at assembling things, good eye for detail. Now, those sort of skills may tend towards somebody who is a handy person, a handyman or a handy woman, or cleaning. Those are possible jobs that you can explore to generate income. Or maybe you're creative, maybe you're more intuitive. You just know how to come into a space and just make it your own. You experiment with foods, spices, recipes, or on the flip side, you experiment with clothes, outfits. You just like to try different colors on. And more importantly, you're a relatable person. People like you, people can relate to you. They're able to come out of their comfort zone when they're talking to you. Now, possible jobs you may want to consider in this space is a personal shopper, especially in a time like this where we can't go into shops, physically go into shops to try clothes on. How can you help people over Zoom or socially distanced to help still make them presentable in this sort of new normal? Cooking is also something else, or baking, et cetera, et cetera. I've listed a number of other ones here as just the skills to jobs mapping, but try to think of yourself along these axes and think about the things that you put in the chat box. What are the skills that you have, and what sort of mappings could I start to think of to zero me down into my ideal or one or two areas where I would like to focus on? But obviously it doesn't end there. You might be interested in property. There's different layers of property that in terms of jobs or opportunities that you might want to consider, whether it be property management, property sale and acquisition, et cetera, et cetera. You might be into photography. You got a great eye for detail. You love nature, love expressing yourself. Or as I mentioned, maybe you love cooking, you love baking, you love experimenting in the kitchen. This is an interesting one from a coaching perspective, because there's so many people at very critical points that have been reached over this pandemic. And what do I mean by that? Some people have actually gone through this very trying season and realized that there's other things they feel they should be doing. Some people need guidance in their finances. Some people need guidance in terms of life as a whole. What sort of skills do you bring that you can help coach people, young people, older people, it doesn't matter what it is, into who or what they want to become, entering this next phase of their lives? You might be good at IT skills, generating computer-aided designs, or you're good at hairdressing, or as I mentioned, you're a great fashionista. I really like this one because I think we're in a very, very good time for opportunities as a non-executive director. And why do I say that? Diversity is a big theme that has come out of not just COVID-19, not just out of Black Lives Matter, not just out of equality in the world today. It's come out because we need more diversity on boards. We need more people who have a different idea. We need more people who have a different experience. So considering your skill sets, considering the skills that you have, considering the exposure that you have, this might also be an opportunity for you. I myself sit on the board of 2 startups, and this is where I lend my experience in terms of my business experience, my finance experience, to a board that includes people of different backgrounds. But the idea there is to cultivate respect, compassion, openness, and drive better innovation. And finally, a handy person. Now, I'm going to give you a few cues to help discover your ultimate skill. Now, there's 1,001 ways to do this, but I think these 3 cues are very simple, short, and very efficient and effective. When you're doing something that you love doing, think about how you tend to lose track of time. For example, when I'm looking at spreadsheets that contain financial numbers, I can be there for hours, just using it to build different models, using it to arrive at different conclusions. And before I know it, it's already midnight. Some people have this in different areas of their lives. So if you lose track of time doing it, the chances are it tends more to your ultimate skill. The other one is being disconnected from your environment. When you're able to sort of just shut out of the environment you're in, whether you're in a busy park or you're in an airplane, you're about to take a flight somewhere, and you're just able to completely zone out and just concentrate on what you're doing, that also tends to show perhaps a cue towards something that might build to your ultimate skill. And then finally, I think we all get this in some way, shape, or form, whether it be at home or at work. Your boss says, no, this is how you should do it. And you're like, no, 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 this is how I want to do it. I want to focus this way. I want to do it that way. Or this is the one I tend to see more often. Your mom showing you how to cook a meal and she says, no, you don't do it like that. You have to add this ingredient first. You have to boil the water this way first. And you're like, no, I want to do it my way. I want to do it creatively. Think about those things that you just have a natural knack for doing it your way and not following procedure. So these three things might be able to help you narrow down your skill set a bit more. And finally, validate and execute, right? So this is really just about putting yourself out there. Nobody ever builds anything in a vacuum. You can't build a product in a vacuum. You can't offer a service in a vacuum. You have to go out and test it. Meet people. Who are the people doing what you're doing? If you're interested in photography, check the people in church who are doing photography. Check the people in your network who are doing photography. Go on LinkedIn, find out about photography-led groups, for example. Find out more what it takes to become a photographer. Find out if you want to be a generalist photographer or a niche specific photographer. And Jason would expand more about this. And finally, execute, go for it. It's so great to have a plan. I remember Carlos Ghosn, very well-known CEO, said 5% of everything is strategy, 95% is execution. So a plan is all great, but you need to execute. And I know I've talked about various things in terms of building your ultimate skill, but I want to reiterate this. I know this is predominantly about generating multiple streams of income, but in the long run, it's important to remember that education and exposure are far more valuable than money. Increase that side, that aspect of your balance sheet, and I'm sure that will stand you in good stead. So on that note, I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Jason, who will go through it in a bit more detail.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Deji, thank you so much. So I am going to continue on this journey of multiple streams of income. And I'm going to go into some of the things that Deji's talked about in a bit more detail. But my section is a bit more about practical application and how we can put a bit more meat on the bone. But before I go into that, I've just got a quick digression, okay? Yes, we're talking about multiple streams of income, but it's not all about the money. It's about the money, but not all about the money. I just want to introduce this concept of Ikigai. What on earth is that? Ikigai is what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, what the world needs. I like to call it your sweet spot. It's where you occupy all these spaces. And it's talking a bit more about your being and your identity. It's more than money. And when you find this place, almost like your calling, you'll find that you'll never actually work a day in your life because you're fulfilling purpose. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And hold on to this because we're going to revisit this concept a bit later on. So let's get into the Brown family again, and we're going to zero in on Solomon, who has come to this seminar. Solomon, 28-year-old chap, civil engineer, 56K per annum. Now, after attending this webinar, Solomon's really, really excited about all the things that he has heard and all the things that he's learning about. So he started to think about his own ultimate skills, but like some of us, Solomon lacks insight into himself. So he asks his wife, Lara, his sister, Alexis, and his mother, Sandra, if they can help him with regard to getting insight into some of his skills so we can start to build up his ultimate skills. And here are some of the things that they come up with. Solomon is methodical, fussy, precise. You're tidy. You're a cabinet maker. You like to measure things. You're accurate. Solomon is pedantic. Creative. Solomon is good at or good with. You're good with numbers. You're good at technically understanding things. You're really good at understanding things that are quite complicated. You're good at talking to people. You're an artist. You're good at drawing. You're very spatially aware. You've got wacky ideas. You've got a great interest in homes and properties, big and small. Now, Solomon's basically noticed that all along from the past that he had a tendency towards maths, numbers, or art. And being from a traditional Afro-Caribbean household, he was always taught that maths pays and art doesn't. So he went down the maths route. He ended up doing pure maths and mechanics at A-level, and then went on to study engineering at Sheffield University. Upon graduating, he got a job in civil engineering, and at the moment, he's working on major infrastructure projects all over the country, mainly in the south, and he's currently working on Crossrail. So let's put together Solomon's summary based on the headings that Deji has given us. So self-management skills, things that are innate to Solomon. Attention to detail, creative, good with numbers. Transferable skills, communication. Now, let me talk a bit more what we mean by that. So Solomon is good at taking things that are complicated, technical, and difficult to understand, and making them uncomplicated, simple, and easy to understand. Design, but not only design, but he's actually good at using IT in design. Job content skills, architectural drawings and floor plans, doing survey reports for all these construction sites that he's worked on. And he's just got a lot of industry specific experience because let's face it, he's been working for a while. So now Solomon is thinking about ways he can use his ultimate skills. Now, Solomon, by virtue of what he does, and this happens to everybody, if you're a cook, then people will ask you about food. Solomon is an engineer and works on construction sites. So he's always giving advice to people about his trade. And he's always having conversations. And he does this free of charge, by the way, out of the goodness of his own heart. Now, on one of these calls, he's speaking to a friend of a friend and giving some advice about some a home refurbishment project. And this person that he speaks to just happens to work for a property advisory group. And this chap is wowed by Solomon's expertise, knowledge, and skill. And he says, hey, yo, Solomon, you know what? I can connect you with some people who could really use some of those skills that you have. Namely, your ability to construct all these home design projects and produce architectural drawings. Now, Solomon gets on and does some of this stuff. And what Solomon is starting to notice is that there's a lot of demand for his skills and the things that he can provide. And that has been driven by, with the COVID pandemic, so many more people are now working from home and they all need space. So they need their extension, they need their loft extension, etc. So this is what we call a change-driven demand, yes? Change-driven demand. So in this atmosphere of change, Solomon's basically picked up on an opportunity. So Solomon's really firing away now, and he starts thinking about a second ultimate skill. So he's building his network through all the home design and architectural drawings that he's doing. He's making sure that he's keeping his LinkedIn profile up to date, and it's up to date with all of his experiences. Now, via a mutual friend, a professor at Warwick University is looking at Solomon's profile, seen his experience, and decides to connect with him. So these guys organize a coffee, socially distanced, of course, and they start to discuss Solomon's experience. And off the back of that, Solomon's invited to Warwick University to do what? To discuss, to share, and to teach on design projects that are both green and sustainable. Now, those communication skills that we highlighted Solomon's earlier, where he's able to take complicated things and make them simple, they actually make Solomon a great teacher, which is perfect for engineering students who are developing their building blocks of understanding so they can understand this field that they're going into. Now, this gig that Solomon has got himself involved with now becomes regular. So he's regularly going to Warwick University to teach, and he actually becomes an affiliate professor, working on a monthly basis. Now, you guys are saying, okay, Jason, you know, that's fantastic. This is great. We've learned about Solomon and Solomon's skills, wonderful. But Jason, you know what? Solomon's made up. I need a real example, something I can get my teeth into. Okay, well, let's talk about me, okay? I'll be your real example. I hope I'm real enough for you. And we're going to go into a little bit about my story, and hopefully I can elucidate some things that will be useful for us. Now, my story is quite long, yeah, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip bits and just highlight sections where we can glean some learning. I'm just going to leave this one in the background. I have basically set out some of my ultimate skills in the same format that Deji has used, just to bring this together a bit more. So my story, let's go for it. Let's rewind. In fact, I'm not going to take a number of years because you're going to guess my age. But what I'll do is that I'm going to go back to when I am just about to go into medical school. So I'm a doctor by trade, so you'd hope anyway that I went to medical school at some point. So I'm the year just before I'm starting my first year medical school, so I'm 19, 20, yeah? Now I'm coming from a place of need. What is my need? I'm going to be in school for 6 years, which is a long old time, yeah? And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I need a place to live. My place of my position of need is I need a place to live. So then based on that, I have an idea. What is my idea? Wouldn't it be phenomenal if I can own my own home at an early age? Why? Because by the time I finished school, I'd have paid off a large chunk of my mortgage. Fantastic. So then what's the next thing I did? I stepped out. I did something based on my idea, which came from my place of need. Yeah. What did I do? Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't do anything that was particularly bright or intuitive. Yeah. I looked at the back of the student finance form, which is the form for your student loans and whatnot. And I found other sources of finance, which had all these bursaries and grants and whatnot. And I basically just applied for everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, between the year that I got into, the year that I started university, and between the first and second year of university, I did the exact same thing, and I got every grant bursary that I applied for. And lo and behold, I had enough for a deposit for my first property. Now, the point I want to make here is that that was seemingly impossible, yeah? And sometimes the things that we are going to go for, they do seem impossible. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Step out. What's the worst that could have happened? I could have applied for the grants and they could have all said no. What have I lost? Nothing. I've just figured out that, okay, maybe applying for grants ain't going to work for me. But it did. Take home message. Just do something. Step out. Just do it. Nike. Another point that I want to elucidate from this is that, okay, I'm applying for all these applications, for all these grants and bursaries and whatnot, yeah? Now, I had to use what I had. Okay, well, what did I have? So I'm going for a prestigious degree, okay, medicine's a decent degree, good. I'm from a low-income family, and I'm a young Black boy. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's what I had. But I used what I had to my advantage, because those things put me in a good position when I'm applying for free money. So the point I want to make here is, whatever position that you find yourself in, make it work for you. The position that I was in was that I was a student, and that's not a great position to be in. Now, often students are deemed as to be broke, but I made it work for me. Now I've got the money to get this house, but I still needed help. Yeah, because I'm not in work, I'm in school, as we've already pointed out. So I had to get help. Who did I get help from? So my sister, as in my physical sister, she was wise enough to volunteer to get allow the property to be purchased in her name using her income. My church sister, i.e. Sister Lola, who's actually the forerunner of a lot of these webinars she was talking earlier, she actually, if I'm not wrong, went with me to view my first property and helped me negotiate the deal with the vendor. She introduced me to my broker, or he's now basically my financial advisor. And to this day, we're talking like 15 years later, this guy, I speak to this guy almost 2 or 3 times a week, which I'm pretty sure isn't normal for most financial advisors. So maybe you guys should pray for him. I'm a lot to handle from time to time. But the point I'm making here, ladies and gentlemen, is that I needed help. Yeah, we will all need help, okay, at some point. And often the people that you need help from, they're already around you. My physical sister, my church sister, they were already there. So let's carry on with my story. I've now got this house, fantastic, well done. But now I need to get in tenants, right? So I can get the rent from the tenants to pay the mortgage, because as I said, I'm still in school. So interestingly enough, I'm in school and I'm learning all these communication skills, yes? So I'm seeing patients on the wards, I'm talking to the young, talking to the old, I'm learning how to talk to different people. But then when I go home, I'm now using those same communication skills when I'm doing viewings to let these rooms in this house that I've got. And what I began to learn was that when I'm showing these rooms around, yeah, the potential tenants are buying the room, but what also they were buying into was me. So I was actually learning my own style of how to sell. Leadership. When I'm at school, I'm learning how to lead clinical teams. So I'm leading nurses, I'm leading physiotherapists, I'm leading occupational therapists. At home, I'm now learning how to manage people, because at this point, I'm like 20, 21 years old. The people I'm renting to are young professionals who are all older than me. So I'm managing the dynamic of a household, dealing with all the issues that, that come up in the house, because it's obviously my problem. At school, I'm learning problem solving, how to diagnose a particular illness, what treatment it requires to solve it, what surgery is required to solve it, to treat it. At home, I'm using those same skills, but I'm solving cash flow problems, business problems. So a particular example would be, I'll never forget this because it's so pertinent in my mind. Go back to 2004, yeah? The Bank of England had increased the Bank of England base rate 3 times over 3 consecutive months. I get a call from my sister and she says to me, "Hey, Jay." I'm like, "Hey, sis, how you going?" She's like, "Jay, the mortgage has gone up." And I'm like, "What do you mean the mortgage has gone up?" She's like, "The mortgage has gone up. You're on a variable product. You have to pay more money." And I'm like, I'll never forget this. I remember asking her this question. "So can they do that?" And she went, "Yeah, Jay, they can. You're on a variable product." So now I'm thinking to myself, I've got to find some extra money to pay this mortgage. And I remember walking downstairs. Now, the property had bedrooms, but it also had 2 receptions when I bought it. Now, one of those receptions had already been turned into a bedroom, but then the other one was being used as a living room, and then we had a dining room as well. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? The majority of the time, when we get home, everyone's in their room anyway. How about I put a couch in the dining room, move the dining table over there, turn it into a living space, open plan, very modern. It wasn't open plan at all. But how about I do that to make that work? And that way I can turn the reception, the living room into a bedroom. So I then sold that idea to my tenants who weren't feeling it, but I did it anyway. And I got another tenant into that bedroom, which brought another £500 into the coffers a month, which solved my cash flow problem. I'm just making the point that the same skill I'm using in one place, I'm using in another place. Now, at this point, I'm basically running a small business. But if you'd have asked me, Adrian, are you running a business? I'd have told you no. I was running a house in multiple occupation. Ladies and gentlemen, at that point, I didn't even know what that term meant, but that's what I was doing. Point, you don't necessarily need a title. Some of these things we're doing anyway. So let's fast forward a little bit more. I've progressed in property. A few more years have gone by. I've qualified. I've bought a few more properties. I actually understand what a mortgage is. I bought a small property in Thamesmead. And I remember my friend gave me a call and he said, Jay, I'm like, yeah, how you doing, man? He's like, look, there's this company called Little Lets, you know, where you can rent out your property on a short-term basis. Little Lets was one of the predecessors to Airbnb when this whole concept of short-term letting was quite new and novel at the time. And I remember having a conversation with him and I'm saying to him, yeah, but bro, who is going to want to rent on a short-term basis in Thamesmead? Who comes to London and wants to go to Thamesmead? Now, that's not an indictment on Thamesmead, okay? I lived in West Thamesmead for many years. I'm not racist, go Thamesmead, all right? But I'm thinking, so who's going to want to come to Thamesmead? But I got to thinking for a second, I'm like, hold on a second, hold on. So let's just say I'm a family from France, yeah? My name is Jean-Claude Francais, and I want an affordable holiday in London. Now, remember, think about conversion rates as well, and London is quite expensive. How am I going to achieve an affordable holiday in London? Now, actually, if I've got 3 kids, then a nice little 2-bedroom apartment might be right up my street. I got thinking about it, yeah, he might put him and his wife in one room, 1 kid in the other room. Maybe if I put a couple of sofa beds in the living room, put some Union Jack pictures all over the place. The property was next to the river, yeah, riverside property. Yeah, this could work. And I thought to myself, you know what? Let's just say I go for this and it doesn't work. What have I lost? Not much. All that will happen is that I'll just switch it back to a normal tenancy and we'll keep it pushing. So we gave it a go. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we did was we put the flat up for anywhere between like 100 and 120 pounds a night. And we were selling between 20 and 25 nights a month. This property was making way more than it should have done based on any statistics or any advice that I would have got about potential yields for a buy-to-let property. So then, this is great. So we're cooking. So then what we did was that I did it in that flat, it's going well. Then now, you know what? I've got a flat that's in Bermondsey, closer to central London. How about I do it in that flat as well? I did it in that flat too. Boom, it's making loads of money. Then I think to myself, you know what? A friend of mine approached me and said, you know what, Jason, I've got a flat to rent. Do you want to rent it from me? And I'm like, hey, why not? So then I rent my friend's flat and now I'm doing it in my friend's flat. So I'm doing it first of all in mine, then in my friend's. Then I'm like, okay, this is still going really well. So I start to approach other UK landlords through local estate agents. And I start to rent out their properties, doing the same thing. Again, doing really well. Then things are getting bigger. I'm like, okay, I start to rent more properties from international landlords through bigger agents. A lot of these guys from Hong Kong or China. The things are still going really well. I need more properties. But now I get to a place where, you know what, instead of me renting out individual flats, how about I rent whole apartment blocks? And I started to do that, and it's still going well. And that's more or less where I'm at now. My hope for the future is that instead of renting other people's properties and then renting them out, I can build my own hotels. Now, ladies and gentlemen, key point that I want to raise, I said all of that to say this. I didn't start from the beginning and say I wanted a hotel. What I did is that I started from where I was and I built up. And trust you me, every step that I went down, I made mistakes. Sometimes things went wrong, but I picked myself up and the things that I learned helped me at the next level. I didn't go from 0 to hero. It's always step by step. Fail forward and you learn as you go. So now let's get back to Solomon. Now I've given you a real example. So Solomon is booming. Solomon is doing really, really well. So he's doing his home design projects for these extensions and whatnot. He's doing a site visit on a Friday and the paperwork on a Sunday, and he's able to deliver those projects successfully. He is recommending kitchens that are Wren kitchens to some of his people who are using his services, and he's negotiated a little deal with Wren to take a small percentage on every kitchen he recommends. Now, because these kitchens are like 15K in total, even his small percentage has given him quite a bit into the coffers every month. He's now provided consultancy. This advice that he was given out for free, he's now charging people for it, and they're willing to pay. As we discussed earlier, he's teaching at university, which is bringing in a substantial amount of money. Now, Solomon gets to this really interesting place. What is this place, Jason? He's now finding out that he's making more from his side hustle than he is from his main job. So he's thinking to himself, is this a side hustle anymore, or is it my main job? And that's something that can happen to many of us as our multiple stream of income begins to take off. So what I want to do now is just talk to us a little bit about this element of things, just because it's a natural progression. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a webinar on starting your own business. So it's not exhaustive. It's just a few tips and hints because it's a logical progression, and it's a place that a lot of us will find ourselves in as we take our multiple streams of income further. Now, you go online and you look up starting your own business. And this is a typical list that you might come up with. Write a business plan, choose a business structure, name your business, develop a brand, find finance, hire an accountant, set up finance, acquire software and IT, understand legal issues, learn how to sell. And ladies and gentlemen, this, hear me, is a great list. I don't want to take anything away from this list. So I don't want anyone to go and say after hearing this that, oh, I knocked this list. The list is fantastic. But you don't necessarily need all of these things before you start. The reason why I mention this is that sometimes what we try to do is try to get all these things on the list sorted out before we start what we're doing, and it can stop us, stunt us, stagnate us, and even cripple us, so we don't do it. Now, if looking at a list like this ends up crippling you, then this thing has done the opposite of what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to help you. Take home messages that just go for it and don't let anything stop you. Now, what you'll find is that with a list like this, you don't necessarily need all of them before you start, but you may need one or two or three. And it's about recognizing which ones you need at the beginning and only doing those, and then doing the others as you go along. So quick examples, let's just say you're setting up a new mobile app or something like that. Then within the day of Insta and what's the other ones? Insta, WhatsApp, what's the other one? Insta, Snapchat, there we go. I'm still current, let me. The name and the brand might be really, really important. So those are things that, you might want to get sorted out in the beginning. But the structure, probably not that important. Let's talk about cake making businesses, because my niece at the moment has just started her own cake making business. She's still at university. Now, for her business, making cakes, legal, i.e. maybe legal issues, i.e. maybe the health and safety related to the cakes that she makes, make sure that she stores them properly and doesn't get people sick, so need a doctor like me, might be important. But business sourcing finance and things, probably less so. So it's about identifying the ones that you need and not letting yourself be bogged down with the rest of it. So I've said what not to do. What are the few tips that I would recommend that you do when starting out your own business, or taking your multiple stream of income further. And this is my list, okay? Just some top tips, and again, not exhaustive. So the top bit, financial vision, have your why. And it's back to this principle of Ikigai. And the reason, again, why it's so pertinent that you do this is that this will really keep you in difficult times. It is not going to be easy. The great things never are. And what you'll find is that if you have your why, it will hold you in the difficult times and help you to fail forward and keep on getting back up. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Start from where you are. Produce your product now. Serve up your service now. If it's cakes, bake it. If it's pies, cook it. If it's rice, make it. Whatever it is, whatever your product is. If it's designing clothes, do it now. Start with the skills that you've got. Start from the position that you are. Do something. Leverage what you have. Now, what you have is of course your skills, but also the network that you have. In the example that I gave, I leveraged what I had. I had a sister, I had a church sister, I had a network, I had people around me who had all these skills which I could leverage off of. Whatever position that you're in with the whole applications thing, leverage from where you are. Industry selection. So as Deji's kind of really alluded to, you start with you, i.e. the skills that you have, but you do have to end with the market, i.e. what's going to sell, and then connect the dots. So you may need to do some research into, based on what skills you have, what industries you can plug into to actually make some money. Then there's this concept of niche versus non-niche. Now, this concept of niching is making yourself very, very specific and going for a specific target audience. Let's use the cake example again. And so instead of making general cakes, you can put yourself forward as I make cakes specifically for weddings. Now, somebody could argue, well, Jason, why on earth would I do that? If I'm doing specifically for weddings, aren't I narrowing my market? Yes, you are. But when you're small, sometimes going for a narrow market helps you because then you get a bigger piece of the pie of that narrow market. And it's a great strategy, especially when you're starting up and building up yourself and your business identity. But Jason, what if my business doesn't lend itself well to niching? It's not that kind of thing that I can niche that easily. Then that's okay. And that takes us back to basics because we've built off the skills that you have. So that means that you should be excellent at what you're doing. Just be excellent at what you're doing and you'll make money from it anyway. Number 5, formally start a business at the right time. Once you're in business, once you're already doing it, you'll actually get a better understanding of what you're doing. You'll understand better the income and the expenses. It becomes fact, it's not theory. So you'll know when it's the right time to formally turn it into a business. The specifics, number 6, specifics for your trade. So get the right training, network, accountancy, legal advice, insurance that is specific to your sector. Not all accountants are the same. Not all legal advisors are the same. You need the people who know your sector and know what you're doing. Number 7, and this is probably the most important one, balance, balance, balance. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 24 hours in a day, not a second more, not a second less. If you're going to be doing all this extra stuff, then something has to give. You can't take on all this extra stuff and then not drop anything else. So what you'll find is that as you're doing more in one place, another place has to give. And what you have to do is that you have to make sure that you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. So you can't starve your wife or husband, your children, your personal time with God. You can't starve those of time and attention because you're doing this. You have to balance it. And there will always be people around who have gone ahead of you who can help you in making those balancing decisions. So Solomon has applied all of the things that we are talking about. So Solomon, first of all, he establishes his vision. He wants financial freedom for him and his wife, Lara, and he wants to own 2 properties outright that he can give to his 2 children, Jason and Jasonetta. Solomon sets up a limited company with Companies House, and he calls it Solomon Structural Solutions. He hires an accountant who specializes in his specific sector. He gets independent legal advice about his work contract and advice about indemnity. Now he's working alone. He doesn't want to get in trouble, any trouble in that area. Based on the advice he gets, he obtains the correct insurance and indemnities to protect himself and his clients. He joins a forum via LinkedIn and connects with professionals who are in the same situation as him, and he learns so much just from talking to them. Number 7, he started from where he was and he has built up. No business plan, no finance, no premises. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I've been Dr. Jason Amo, and I'm going to hand you back over to the rest of the team as we go through the next stage of this webinar.
Thank you so very much, Jason. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been most patient. This is obviously our final presentation for a webinar, should I say, for 2020. And it was really important to us that we emphasized a lot of these debt management strategies, especially with Christmas coming up, where we haven't seen our families, we haven't been out much, and where there may be a temptation to go out and treat ourselves and spend money that perhaps we don't have. Now, this, as I say, really does bring us to the end, and I want to thank you all for your patience this afternoon. There is a very important question that I have had, and actually I've been sent this question privately from different sources. So if the presenters can take themselves off mute, I would like to read out this question. This question pertains to the small print. And what they have said is, why is it that companies write the really important things in small print? Is it because they are trying to deceive us? Now, which of the presenters would like to answer this question? Presenters, please take yourself off mute. Iyabo, please take yourself off mute. And please answer this question. We've had it more than once, so I think it's an important question that we answer before we go. Whilst the presenters are getting ready to answer that question, I've had another question here. Somebody has suggested that it might be a good idea if perhaps during the course of next year, we think about having a webinar on starting a business. Now, this is one of the things that we will obviously discuss. And if it's practical and viable, absolutely, it would be something that we would absolutely consider doing in 2021. Can I please have one of the presenters, any of the presenters, to please answer the question about the small print?
Thank you, Lola, for that. The small print is a common legal way in putting your obligation in a smaller way, because the obligations are very long and it will take a lot of the material. What you do, they put in a smaller print so that they can put more in. However, some companies have used that to input some obligations that you will not notice. That's why it's always advisable that you always read the small print. And even if when you're going through with someone, ask them, please, can you tell me what it says in the small print? So yes, they can use it to hide some obligation that you're not aware of. But the idea behind the small print was to be able to put on all the legality in one document so that it can be seen by everyone. But in the process, people have used it to hide some information as well. So it's important, especially if you're going into a contract, that you read the small print.
Thank you for that, Iyabo. Now, just before we go, I would like to hand over to Bisi Oriola, who is the team leader of the financial services team, for her closing remarks. Sister Bisi, I'd like to pass over to you, please.
Wow, wow, wow. Again, good afternoon, everyone. I mean, I just want to, I mean, I don't know where to start. 6 months ago, 10 months ago, who knew that this is where 2020 is going to end up. I just want to appreciate a number of people. First of all, I want to appreciate God. I want to thank God for the opportunity to be a blessing to a number of people, because this is the 6th webinar that we've had. I thank God Almighty for trusting us. And I thank our Pastor Kola and the board of ministers. When this thing started, Pastor Kola called me and I said, Sister Bisi, you and your team, you are the priests in the house. So what are you going to do to encourage people in terms of their finances? And I give glory to God, for using us as a vessel. I'm going to mention some names. Yabo, thank you very much, because, the people that have been the presenters. Thank you, Deji. Deji, you didn't have to do this. Deji is not even a member of financial services team. And but he said, what can I do? When he attended the first seminar, he said, what can I do to be of help? I'm sure 6 months down the line, you're thinking, oh God, what have I got myself into? But we really appreciate you. We thank God for Dami Agbola. She's not with us today. She did it to a property investment. We thank God for Chris Johnson, who is Dami is not even a member of New One, but when I shared, what financial services team is all about, what is on her heart, she says, Ma, I want to join in. I want to be a blessing. Thank you, Chris Johnson. We thank Lady J. I mean, what can I say about Lady J? Some of you that have attended the investment seminars, on fire. She is really on fire. Mrs. Onyilola, of course, that's my Oga at the top. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot from you in the last 25 years. You have been a great leader to me and a great friend. Jason, you are my son, you know that. I thank God for where God has put you, where you are today. And then I deliberately put Lola and Pastor Emmanuel. Oh, those two, what can I say about those two? All those the presentations you have seen today, it's been a lot of hard work. You will notice that this is the first time I got involved in terms of presenting. I appreciated you before, but I even appreciate you more now. What can we say about our deaf community, Brother Eze? You and your team, you rock. They ensured that our deaf community are not exempted, that they are financially empowered. Brother Eze, Sister Eunice, Sister Lolade. Lolade is not with us today, Baba Lola. I mean, those people, when we do rehearsals, they say it as they see it. They give us the feedbacks and we're like, oh God, so we don't really want to mess up when we do rehearsals, because we know that they will tell us as it is. And we thank God for Samuel that joined us today, that stepped in really and truly, like I said, is just meant by the grace of God. And our delegates, our prayer is that, all those things, all those information, they will not be in vain. We will be like those who hear the words. There are some people that will hear the words and they will fall by the rock. People, when their adversity of lives come, they will lose it. But our prayer is that we know that all those webinars have been on good ground and they will germinate, there will be harvest, and all of us, we will move on financially empowered. Thank you very much for attending. 2021 is going to be great. It's going to be good. We trust God. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you. We've shared a number of things with you in terms of Investment Club. We are working on that. We'll come back to you. And also on the chat, if you can put, some of you have been putting what you want us to do in 2021. Continue to do that. Lola, I don't know what to say. Emmanuel, both of you, you've anchored this initiative and you've been committed to it. My prayer is that God will continue to bless you, will continue to replenish you and pour fresh anointing upon our heads. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you everyone so much for joining us this afternoon. Please go now and enjoy your evening in whatever it is that you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure throughout this whole time presenting and getting ready for these webinars. So thank you, good afternoon, and God bless.